fuck do you want?
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of What the Fuck Do You Want? And if you've already seen the title card, then you know it's going to be one of those weeks.
What the fuck's that supposed to mean?
I'm going to be talking to myself and most people are going to now skip the episode.
The downloads don't lie.
Then do it fucking better. You're starting off a show as if we're about to shite on the listener's lap and you're handing them cutlery.
That's actually an accurate analogy for you.
That's 4 A's in a row.
Do love a bit of alliteration.
So how are we keeping?
Fan-fucking-tastic.
Grand.
Not going to ask how I'm keeping.
You'd only fucking lie.
Who the fuck cares about you?
I do. And I'm all that matters.
Galileo.
Nope. No fucking about today. We have a great subject this week and we don't need your substandard filler before we start.
It is somewhat traditional to have some chatter in a podcast.
We can fucking do without. Get in, talk about your subject, and fucking go. Half hour, repeat it next week.
But you'll lose some of that charming off-kilter interaction between the hosts.
That's a load of wank. You've got inside jokes, you've got material stolen off TikTok or YouTube shorts, and that endless cycle of, well, there's the episode title. People aren't going to like this opinion. Oh, this is going to get me strung up on Twitter, or X. And thanks for listening to this podcast. Here are the details to find the podcast you've already listened to, as if you couldn't find the podcast you've just fucking listened to.
He is a bit giddy about the subject this week.
Pick up the fucking pace.
Did you see the rusty planters they've put up in town?
No, ask the fucking question.
Fucking council. Might as well stick flowers in a burnt-out car.
Ah, for fuck's sake.
They have the Christmas tins of sweets out already.
Remember the goth club in Toronto?
Fuck you.
Oh yeah.
Get to the point of the show where I tell the fucking story.
But that story's about you too.
To be fair, that story's mostly drunk punk.
I like pinning things in drunk punk. I'm not taking credit for that fucking animal.
This feels like it's spiralling into more pointless filler. So, at the hostel we stayed at in Toronto, which is in Canada, there was a nightclub next door. Behind
Punk, deadbeat, what the fuck do you want?
Today, as you're listening to this, it is October 23rd, which is a very important date to a certain sect of pricks on the internet.
In the year of our Lord, 2077, before there was a cyberpunk to be seen, it was the day the bombs fell, dooming the planet to endure a nuclear holocaust that threatened to remove all existence from the planet.
This week, homeboys, we're talking about Fallout 1.
Maybe you'll think of me when you are all alone.
So, for the unseasoned among the audience that haven't tuned out already, what is Fallout?
If you don't know what Fallout is, and you're still here, you should turn off the fucking podcast and jump off a fucking bridge.
Fallout was a PC game that was released in 1997, a turn-based RPG based in the wasteland that was once America.
As rumours go, Tim Kaine developed this game on their lonesome in the beginning phase. He then recruited fellow Interplay staff to pitch in on their time off.
This was the spiritual successor to Wasteland, a game we touched on in our Commodore 64 episode. Due to some legal bollocks, they were unable to create a direct sequel, so Fallout was born.
The team came together and was 30 members strong, according to reports. This has all the markings of a passion project. There were a lot of hurdles in the development cycle, but the team powered through them.
Interplay were keen for the team to dump Fallout and start work on more titles with the Dungeons & Dragons license, which they had recently acquired, probably wanted to get the use out of it.
Who the fuck would want to play a Dungeons & Dragons video game? That's double concentrated virgin fuel right there.
During our research, we found out that the setting and the level of violence were not sitting well with a lot of the publishing side of the business.
Which were probably the two elements that made it stand out to little baby-faced punk. We do love a bit of post-apocalyptic and hyper-violence.
You could shoot and kill children in it, and that meant it was my favourite game of all time.
It did also have other great aspects outside of the kiddie killing. It would have been our first experience of an RPG of this style. A cracked CD was given to me in school and I was told I had to play this fucking game.
It installed. It took a very long time on our very, very shit computer.
When it was finally starting, we were treated to a short movie. The song maybe by the ink spots, is playing as we watch big bastards in what turns out to be power armour, killing a restrained prisoner. We pan away from the TV playing this propaganda, and then we get the vocal talents of one Ron Perlman as he pipes up with the now iconic
War. War never changes.
explaining the events that led up to the Great War in this world.
A resources war that led to China invading America. America, in turn, takes control of Canada. Seems we had tapped the planet dry for petroleum and uranium, so had to murder each other for what was left.
Imagine that type of dystopian future. Wild. Pure fiction.
As previously mentioned, October 23rd, 2077, in another world war, the planet was bombarded with nuclear weapons in a 2-hour-long attack. Thankfully, there were vaults littered around the country, and some people were lucky enough to be able to hide in there for some safety.
The company that makes vaults is called Vault Tech. And yes, they created advanced bomb shelters around the country in retaliation to the growing threats of nuclear war.
Your character is the descendant of somebody that made it to the safety of one of these vaults, so they've never experienced the horrors of the outside world.
Which in itself was a lovely tool for immersion. As a player, you are in the same boat as this freshly emerged vault dweller. You are both naive to this world and have no idea what you're going to come up against.
The game starts off with the head honcho of the vault, the Overseer, explaining that you're all up Shite Creek. The controller chip for the water purification system is fucked up beyond repair.
Without clean drinking water, the vault and all its residents are going to die, so the fate of your underground family rests on your shoulders.
God, can you imagine the smell of a vault if they didn't have shower water?
The system can't be repaired, nor can a suitable workaround be found. It seems that you're going to need to hit the surface and find a replacement. A nice, vague, directionless task with an incredibly strict time limit. If you fuck up, everyone you've ever known will die.
150 days to get it sorted. You've loads of fucking time.
Before you leave, the Overseer marks Vault 15 on your map, and it's way over to the east. The vaults are all numbered. I should have mentioned that earlier. Your vault, your very own vault, is super lucky Vault 13.
So with Vault 15 as your destination, you are then unceremoniously kicked out and dumped at the front of the massive vault door to start your adventure.
Where, if you look at your feet, you find the skeletal remains of the previous person tasked with your mission.
Bollocks.
Seems like the Overseer has sent a few dwellers out to look for this chip, with very little success.
The body is called Ed. Ed has a gun and some recovery items you can rob from his dead body. And you are going to need these supplies because getting out of this fucking cave can be a nightmare in itself.
Starting off your game, you can choose from some of the pre-made characters, but what kind of fucking loser does that?
The game employs the Special system, which consists of strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and luck.
Being a fat, ugly and stupid child at the time, I put all my available points into strength and luck.
Being strong and lucky might get you far in the real world, but in Fallout, it didn't do me any favours. There are rats all over this cave, and they killed me a lot. A whole lot. I spent quite a bit of time dead as fuck.
I didn't consider that with all my strength and all my luck, I would be better off just punching them to death rather than trying to shoot them.
I couldn't hit a kiddie fiddler on the team building exercise at the Vatican with this character.
Without an instruction manual, because of my shameful piracy ways, and the lack of any internet access at the time, well, I had to fucking work this out by myself.
After dying 50 times in the first fucking screen of the game.
I eventually bit the bullet. I remade my character, made sure to take skills in small guns rather than gambling or outdoorsman. I also spread the skill points out a bit. Turns out, agility give you more action points, which meant more chances to shoot rats before they nibbled your balls to death.
In the character creation screen itself, you get an explanation of what each special area stat does, and you can see what effect it has on your skill percentages.
Look, we know Fallout isn't the first game in the fucking world with a character creator, but it was our first time creating one. This required some serious fucking thought and consideration. There were notepads, there were post-it notes. I don't think we broke out the calculator for this one.
So after creating our new main character, we started doing some damage. Yes, we kept dying. As things like healing and picking off enemies one by one, well, these were skills that were just outside our grasp at this time.
Sheer ignorance and perseverance saw us out of that fucking cave, eventually. And we emerged into the wasteland, the charred, radioactive remains of the world that once was.
And you could go fucking anywhere.
The map presents itself as a darkened grid, and as you explore this grid, the map fills itself out. By our standards today, it wouldn't be considered an open world in any shape or form, but that sense of being alone and isolated in this vast virtual landscape, it really packed a punch at the time.
It was only a load of fucking tiles. That's utter dog shite.
Naturally, as it was the only point of interest we began with, we ventured towards Vault 15. And it's here you enter Shady Sands, a small farming town.
I like Shady Sands, an inbred little farming town in the arsehole of nowhere. Reminds me of home.
Leaving the vault made you realise just how dangerous the outside world is. Is? Ugh, who fucking writes this shit? The rats were our first hurdle, and now we've encountered our next challenge.
People.
People are fucking disgusting in any setting.
Shady Sands gives you a lot of firsts in the game, and if the cave taught you anything about the battle system, Shady Sands teaches you about a lot of the social aspects of the game.
Off the bat, you're told to put your fucking gun away by the guards before you enter, which I thought was impressive.
I also didn't know how to do it.
We also learned how to save the game before trying to steal anything or shoot children, so you could just reload the game again and nothing happened.
Valuable life lesson right there.
The first guard we meet is also our first indicator of how rough the wasteland really is. They're attempting to grow their own food here, but are being plagued by raiders and rad scorpions.
Rats were a pain in the piss hole, but there are other beasties that have mutated thanks to the radiation, making them bigger, meaner, and ultimately harder to kill.
We can help out Shady Sands a little bit. You can help out on the farm with their irrigation system, and this will improve their crop yield. Or you can storm a bandit base, single-handed, to rescue a damsel in distress.
It's also here that we work out that the bottle caps we've been finding here and there, thank you Ed, are the main currency for bartering with people. A series staple that perseveres right up to today.
Shady Sands is a bit bare bones, but there's plenty of bits and pieces you can steal from various houses.
You bump into the village leader, Aradesh, who quizzes you on what the fuck you want. And why are you hanging around his settlement, you prick?
Cheeky cunt. You should shoot a couple of children just to teach him a lesson.
There are a few characters like Aradesh. They're a bit more important than the rest. They think they're the Andrew Tates, everybody else is an NPC. The way you can tell who is important, when you talk to them, they have an animated head, and their dialogue is voiced.
Which again, something we take for granted in today's games, but mightily impressive at the time. You had branching dialogue, sometimes you had extra dialogue choices depending on your skill set or social standing. There was even an option where you could pull up a search bar, where you could enter words and see if that struck up extra dialogue.
We didn't have a lot of luck with this function, mostly because we put in swear words and childish insults.
Oh, how far we've come in this journey called life.
Talking to the residents also adds locations to your map, nearby settlements they trade with, rumours of dangerous areas or far-off lands. At this point in our adventure, we still don't know if Vault 15 has a spare water chip, so it's worth making note of all the various traders nearby.
Once you've robbed everybody and reloaded your game after shooting a couple of kids, you can relieve yourself of a bit of guilt by helping the residents out.
They're getting fucking wrecked by rad scorpions. You can see people in the village that are suffering from stings from such a creature.
If you have a high enough doctor skill, you can actually help some of them recover.
Doing quests such as these, they're a great way of netting some extra experience points. And you're going to want plenty of experience to make your squidgy little Vault Dweller a bit more durable.
The Vault Dweller is a precious little homeschooled child, dumped into the roughest playground you can imagine.
You need to track down some armour, you need to track down some better weapons, and gain enough experience to wield them properly. It is so very incredibly easy to die in the wasteland during these starting stages.
Before you run off to clear out a cave full of rad scorpions, it might be handy if you can trick some bollocks into being your human shield, just in case.
Well, you can meet one such human shield bollocks in Shady Sands. A man known as Ian.
What is considered in this game as a companion.
Your wasteland amigo. Your best friend. Your pal. Your homeboy. Your rotten soldier. They're your sweet cheese. Your good time boy.
Companions in the base game are a fucking liability. Ian especially. I think everybody ran into the same problem with him. You might find yourself with an extra SMG or similar powerful weapon, and you'd equip it to Ian thinking, oh, this'll help him kill some apocalyptic piss stains with ease.
But the cunt just shot everything that was in front of him. Enemies, you, innocent bystanders. You'd swear he was still in an American high school.
I think it was because of Ian that we learned how to shoot kids in this game. It never would have crossed our minds to shoot nice characters in the game before.
Yes, you could save the game, wipe out an entire settlement, and reload. Doing this bypassed the pesky karma system in place in the game.
Companions also came in useful outside of battle. They might have a few skills that you were lacking, such as lockpicking or science.
But mostly they're there to take a few of the bullets that were meant for you. Even if you wish, one of them wouldn't.
Dogmeat.
Yeah, one of your companions is a wasteland hound called Dogmeat, and he's the best boy.
Even in a nuclear holocaust, puppies proved to be the greatest element of society.
Which is why it's fucking heartbreaking when Dogmeat gets shot, crushed, electrified, stabbed, dissolved in acid, irradiated, burnt to ash, melted by plasma, eviscerated by lasers, blown up by landmines.
Now, if any of this happened to humans, we giggled our hole off. It was brilliant, but you get a bit precious about dogs, even if they're just virtual dogs.
Ah, fuck aye, Dogmeat's the lad. I'd kill 1,000 kids to save one dog.
Oh, well, you have. In Fallout, at least.
With Ian in tow, we set out on our first quest to murder some rad scorpions in a cave for our new pals in Shady Sands.
This is just a tiny little taster of how quests can play out and how you can tackle them in various ways.
Thankfully, choosing to go with Ian, you're doing more damage, and you're giving the enemy another target.
You do have to still manage your health and keep an eye on their health as well. A dead companion is good to know one.
Companions are also pack mules, so if you find too much loot to bring back to a village, you can fill their pockets and sell it later.
For example, when you're doing this quest, rad scorpion tails can be brought back to Shady Sands and made into antidotes, and you can sell the rest if you want a few bottle caps for your travels.
You gain experience for each creature you kill, and eventually your companions level up too. Unlike your character, you can't pick which of their skills improve as it's all predetermined, but they become better the longer you manage to keep them alive.
And after finishing the quest itself, you get a ball of experience, which is a nice way to rack it up early in the game.
Sometimes you can game the system. For the Rad Scorpion Cave, you can kill all the Rad Scorpions and then use dynamite to cause a cave in. You get experience from each kill and then you get a reward for blowing up the cave. Double bubble!
Although, if you're a bit weaker and sneakier, you can just make your way through the cave without fighting any of them and just set dynamite at a weak point, if your character has the right build for that. Fuck, if your character has a high enough perception level, you can just blow up the mouth of the cave and be done with it.
Realising there were so many solutions to the quest, and in the grand scheme of the game, was quite a revelation. This quest was incredibly early and straightforward compared to later, but what a revelation to the tiny underdeveloped brain of this inbred Northern Irish simpleton.
We had dabbled in roleplay before, but nothing to this extent.
It felt like the possibilities were endless as long as you had a decent imagination to go with it.
There were, of course, limited possibilities and only a few scripted outcomes, but it was delivered in a way to impress the young mind of a person that was probably far too fucking young to play this game.
Died a fucking lot in this cave too.
Yeah, these scorpions were the size of fucking cars and they lived in packs.
Yeah, a shocking little taster of what the radiation had done to the local wildlife.
As if the desolate wasteland that surrounded you wasn't fucking enough.
The desecrated landscape could have just been a design decision.
Design decision, my left nut.
The wasteland was a harsh, cruel place, and you could see the influence from movies like Mad Max all over.
The people that had made a life for themselves out here were just as harsh. The contrast between them and the Vault Dweller became even more apparent.
The poor Vault Dweller was just as clueless as we were. As you ran through the wastes, you would get attacked by raiders or more mutated wildlife.
The random encounters you got as you ran through the wastelands even had the chance to be pop culture Easter eggs referencing things from the 90s.
You might even get some fucking bounty hunters jumping on you just for killing some children. As if those losers have nothing better to do.
As we mentioned earlier, you travel tile by tile in the overworlds. After Shady Sands, people may have mentioned places like Junktown or the Hub, which will be marked on your map as locations.
Of course, you could always just run around the wasteland blindly, but the type of enemies you meet the deeper you go tend to put you in your place fairly fucking quickly.
Fucking wolves and raiders. And that's not mentioning those fucking mutants.
Console fanboys.
No, the actual fucking mutants.
On our travels, we can meet ghouls, humans that survived since the bombs fell, in a strange state of immortality. They're basically zombies that survive thanks to the radiation.
The downside being they have to live eternally, looking like the aftermath of a drink driving incident.
But they've retained their humanity and just want to be left the fuck alone mostly.
Yes, when they mix with regular humans, they find being mocked for their looks and smell highly offensive. And I can sympathise with that.
After our dealings in Shady Sands, we decide to venture onwards to Fault 15 and locate our prized watership.
With Ian running in first to make sure the way is safe for us, we find a random wasteland shed. That is the super sneaky entrance to one Fault 15.
Well, you'd think you found the fucking entrance until you get jumped by more fucking rad scorpions, and it's a special fucking surprise, introducing us to fucking mutant mole rats.
And then, after all that, you make your way to the entrance and, well, you can't use it.
You need a fucking rope.
So you hightail it back to Shady Sands and steal some fucking rope.
Usually at this point, at least in our playthrough, this is when you're told the Elder's daughter has been kidnapped, and there is nobody else to rescue her, but only fucking you.
And Ian.
Yes, also Ian, who will most likely be taking several bullets in our rescue attempt.
In our initial playthrough, it took a lot longer than I care to admit finding the rope. And when we attempted to rescue Tandy, the Elder's daughter, well, it didn't fucking end well.
Of course, as wizened gamers now, we know how to use lockpicking, or persuasion through dialogue. You could even use dynamite to blow up the back of her cell. But for stupid kids, violence is always the answer.
We died a lot fighting this gang too. The cans, they're pretty solid.
At one point, we came up with the bright idea of fighting their leader Garl, one-on-one, and getting battered to death in front of his entire gang was an embarrassing way to die.
Too bad we didn't keep our character that only had strength and luck. They would have fisted them in one shot.
Although, if you do end up killing everybody in the camp, you can steal their gear afterwards.
Yes, another tactic learned in this game was robbing the dead. If you saw a character with a cool weapon, or armour, or a fancy hat, the temptation to kill them just to steal it was always present.
It's the end of the world. It's fine to kill somebody to get their cool hat.
Or if they're children.
I guess this makes a nice point in our ramblings to talk about the game's setting.
Fallout exists in a divergence of our very own timeline.
This world also experienced the same world wars and historical milestones, but at some point in history there was a fork in the timeline.
Fallout seems frozen in the 1950s, but with the advancements of super science that were nothing but popular fiction at the time.
While their computers seem primitive to what we would have had in our timeline, their faults, their robotics, how they harness nuclear power, dwarf anything we could have been capable of.
So we have little laptops, tablets, and phones. They have fucking Mr. Handies that clean their houses.
Mr. Handy sounds like a masturbation machine.
I think you made that joke back when you were 10.
The majority of my routine has remained the same from when I was 10.
A nuclear war would almost be worth it just to get some sweet power armour.
The small snippets of video we get in this game have that post-war Americana vibe.
This wholesome life just gives the contrast to the current reality seem even more harsh. It was well implemented in this game because they didn't overuse it and run it into the fucking ground. Bethesda.
The world is just trying to repair itself in the series, and we see very early settlements in the first game.
Caravans braving the wastes to connect the citizens are also a way for you to make some coin or bottle caps as you explore the wastes.
Why would we need to explore the wastes? Sure, we've got our rope, we know where Fault 15 is. Time for the fucking credits. What a great game!
Yeah, about that. You bring your stupid rope back to the vaults and lower yourself in. You fight your way through the ruined vault. Actually, if you've gone back to visit Vault 13 since you started your adventure, it's nearly identical to that place.
Nearly identical, but in absolute ruins, with mutated rodents calling it home.
You find some good gear, you gain some experience, but once you make it to the Overseer's chamber, it becomes quite apparent that there is no water chip. Fuck.
You then become aware of how long your farting about killing scorpions and shooting children has taken you. You've wasted serious time, and you have no lead on where to go next.
The dread this realization instilled in me as a younger player is something I yearn for in a fucking game now. It really felt like you had a goal in this game, and the time limit, well, it lit a fire underneath your perineum.
You now have a number of settlements you can visit, and then you can quiz the residents if they have any information on a water chip.
Each town you go to has their own problems that you may have to resolve before they decide to help you, because they're all greedy, useless cunts who don't have a decent bone in their body.
You should just shoot their children until they agree to help you.
I fucking did.
Going forward, you realise just how small Shady Sands was in comparison to other locations in the game.
Their raiders and their rad scorpions were fucking childish compared to the other nightmares out in the wasteland.
Fucking death claws.
So those fucking floaters, horrible bastards, just fucking shoot them in the eye.
So this is the opening section of the game pretty much. At this point, you've got a little taste of what the wasteland has to offer, you have a few landmarks in your map, and you have a time limit hanging over your head. So you better get fucking moving. And it's still just you and Ian, if Ian hasn't been dissolved in a pool of acid he was standing in while he scratched his hole. You might need some more backup.
Backup comes in the form of the Brotherhood of Steel, an almost mythical order in the wasteland.
You can find their bunker and ask to join the order, but you get fobbed off and sent on a dickhead mission.
The initiation test sends you to an incredibly irradiated area called the Glow to retrieve a treasured item.
So you stock up on Radaway, you get some Radex, and you just prepare yourself to start firing glowing green loads for the rest of your days.
As long as you remembered a fucking rope.
I enjoyed Fallout up to this point, mostly for the gritty violence and the post-apocalyptic setting. It was the Glow that made me love Fallout.
Hard as balls, had to revert to a save from the entrance many, many times just to get through this part.
The Glow is a destroyed research facility, and once you restore power to it, you get a lot of answers to what has been happening in the wastes.
Once again, well aware this is not the first game to do this, but it was our first experience with it. Well thought out, brought all the random elements from surrounding areas and managed to weave them all together. What I thought was a suicide mission from a pair of prankster wanksters from the Brotherhood of Steel, this became a turning point in the game. That's when it felt like your characters would have weight and seriously affect what happens in the wasteland.
Who knew a simple child killer could be so important in the grander scheme of things?
Sadly, this is a game that requires a bit of elbow grease to get going.
Now, the modding community has gone above and beyond getting this running on modern hardware.
Especially Fallout Fixed, F-I-X-T, which includes all the patches, fixes, a few mods, and resolution tweaks. It also adds shooting kids back into the game.
If you do have the time, the patience, and the know-how to get this game running well on a modern PC, I couldn't recommend it enough.
The game's mechanics may have aged, and some of the dialogue may raise an eyebrow in the current climate, but there is a diamond of a game here.
This is one of the first game worlds I got lost in. Sure, the sequel might be bigger. It might be better, but it can only reach those heights thanks to the solid foundations of the original.
There's a reason Bethesda wanted this intellectual property so bad.
Holds a very special place in my dead, pickled heart to this very day.
When the fuck are we getting remakes?
So what the fuck do we want?
Obsidian, to make more Fallout games. New Vegas was the best one.
Well, that's simple. We could have saved half an hour if we just started with that.
But we'd miss all the nuance.
It's three arseholes mutually masturbating over a game that lets you shoot kids. There is no fucking nuance.
As always, we hope we were able to convey why we enjoyed the subject matter so much to you, the listener.
So you better fucking play it if you haven't before. And if you have played it, play it again, you cunt.
Feels like we kind of ruined the ending to our Fallout episode.
This episode is a Shady Sands toddler, and you've got a desert eagle pointed at their groin.
Get fucked.
Get fucked.
Get fucked.
Chemical bomb, eyes melt, skin explodes, everybody dead. It won't be long, it won't be long. People gonna run around losing their heads. A river of blood, who's gonna live? The earth is tired of humans.